afternoon, everyone, or I suppose morning if you are east of where we are in New Jersey. Thank you very much for joining us for what is actually our very first webinar of 2025. This is great. We've got a whole bunch planned for the winter and spring, and I am very excited to start today off with embracing diversity and building successful workplaces. We have an awesome panel of people today with us. So my name is Tracy McDonald. I am the Director of Custom Training with the Learning and Development Initiative of NJII, and I am joined by 4 panelists who all have very different backgrounds. They've got different careers, they have different perspectives, and I'm looking forward to having a very lively discussion with everybody. So we can start with brief introductions. I'm just going to go in order of who's on the slide. So Minyu, you want to go first?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your invitation today. And it is an honor to be among such experts and people that I truly respect. My name is Minue Yoshida. I am the co-founder and CEO of Yoshida Academy. It's been a fantastic joyride living in different countries, but I am here right now, and we actually do this for a living, day in and day night, focus on leadership skill set. Thank you so much.
Excellent. David?
Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here. Thank you, Tracy, for the invitation and the opportunity to partner with you and NJII. My name is David Jones. I serve as the Chief Diversity Officer at New Jersey Institute of Technology.
Excellent. Thank you. Anne-Marie?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation to present to you guys. And so my name is Anne-Marie Sullivan. I'm the CEO of a nonprofit called Spectrum Works, and we provide job training and employment opportunities for neurodiverse individuals. And we do that by building internships and employment programs and building more inclusive workforces at companies.
Awesome. Tanisha.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Tracy, thank you for the invitation. I am Tanisha Coleman. I'm the CEO and founder of Exalt Consulting. We work with a lot of organizations, but particularly nonprofits, to help them recruit and retain their most important staff members. And formerly, before I moved into this full-time, I was working as the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Diversity, Inclusion, and Faculty Development at Rutgers University. So I come with a academic lens and also a lens from the private sector as well.
Excellent. All right, good. Thank you. I really do 100% love this very diverse group, and I've had an opportunity to work with each of you, so I'm excited for today's conversation. So, couple of things. Diversity is complex, and that is it, plain and simple. I don't think that there's anybody who, well, I mean, I suppose people could disagree, but that's the beauty of it, right? We all have different perspectives. We have different places and areas that we come from. Diversity, I think, does mean different things to different people. And today, what we're focusing on is very specifically diversity in the workplace. I do think I would be remiss if I didn't say that diversity, I think, has become something recently that people are unsure of how to talk about or what to talk about. But if we don't talk about it, then how are we creating our work environments, and how are we actually seeing who and what is around us and making all of those different perspectives and places where we come from work together? So it's, I think, in the simplest form, we are all human beings, and just because every human is different from every other human, even identical twins have differences, that makes us diverse just by the fact that we woke up, went somewhere, and showed up someplace else. And so to lead off with that just a little bit, so for the panelists, and I definitely want to hear from everybody on this, when I say diversity, what is the first thing that comes to mind? And we can start with Minyu on this.
I'm going to begin like in the Oscars with like I wasn't ready, but here's my big list. Yes, of course. I had something to share with all of you, and I just think it's because sometimes imagery help us to identify a concept in an easier way. And so I'm going to share my screen now. Let me know just if you see what you're supposed to be seeing. I think so. And so diversity it's a broader concept, and to bring it to life, the way that I set up an easier way to understand the diversity in the book, Inclusion is a Verb, is by segmenting it into 10 categories. So category 1 would be gender. So male, female, non-binary, all of the spectrum of LGBTQA+. The second one is background, which is determined by where we were raised and what geopolitical status and place we were. Ethnicity, which is also requiring where can we trace back our ancestry, and where do we define ourselves as ethnically related, also because biologically ethnicity marks and traces what type of information we have on our DNA. The next one is age, and to the point where we're talking about, it's because diversity of age can go through birth all the way to death, and so we all change and are shifting through time. The next one is preference, which is the things that I say I want, the things I like, the things that I prefer, and we all have differences there. In terms of language, of course, because there's thousands of languages. In terms of abilities, because we all have different abilities, and we have experts on that topic here today. Difference in circumstance, diversity of where I was born, where I had or what I didn't have, but also circumstances are the choices that I make with my life and the experiences that I've gone through, which happens to be different from each and every one of us. And I think that this is one of my favorite, because circumstances marks that diversity has to do with the unique way that I live through life, and nobody can repeat that. The next one is culture, and this is definitely the societal conventions that we agreed to live within our own community, and the traditions and the rituals that we have as a culture and a society. And the last one is affiliation, and then this one has nothing to do with the others, because I can be of one ethnicity, have this age, have these abilities, but I decide to affiliate myself with, and so that is the choice that we take. So to us, diversity, it's all of this at the same time, and then if you put some of them together, that's where intersectionality is born. Thank you.
Wow, intersectionality. I like that. That's phenomenal. Excellent. So, other perspectives. What does diversity mean to you, David? You and I talked about this once a couple years ago when you started at NJIT. What are your thoughts?
Certainly. I think when you think about diversity, I think about perspective, right? Diverse perspectives where we are able to consider the worldview of ourselves and others and bring that into the conversation, bring that into the learning experience, bring that into the communities that we're a part of. I think there's also an extreme level of value towards culture and understanding culture and what that means for individuals across their lived experiences. We want to be able to think about diversity through the lens of accepting others, right, regardless of their background, and what they bring to the particular experience or the space that they're in, and how do we value lived experiences to the point that everyone's lived experience is connected back to the core values of the organization, right? And so diversity is a variety of things, right, in terms of what it can look and feel like, but we want to be able to ensure that within that context, organizations, workplace environments are creating a culture where they value the importance of the diversity and the differences that everyone brings. And we're really creating a culture where we are building bridges across difference, right? And we're making those connections, and we're seeing value in the diversity that others have, and using that as a way to to leverage the ways in which the organization can advance its mission, its values, and its vision.
I like that. That's great. Thank you. Hey, Nisha, just because you're next in the row on the screen.
Sure. I'm happy to chime in on this. I love what both Minwei and David said. I think they both captured a lot of important elements. When I hear diversity, I think about all the ways in which we show up as people, where we show up in the workplace, where we show up outside of the workplace, and all the various layers that make us who we are, and that contribute to how we impact the world around us. So in addition to the typical things of like race and gender and neurodiversity and age and all these other things, I also think about the environments where we're from, right? And the environments where we spend time now, which may be different, right? Where you come from before may not be where you end up. I also think like our family systems are a part of us, right? Like we grow up in different family systems. My family system may be very different from someone else's. And I think about our local, hyper-local cultures that we engage in with people in terms of our neighbors and all these different things, but then our broader cultures in terms of, you know, what larger cultures or backgrounds we identify with or have an affinity to. And then I think about our way of thinking. And one of the other things that's really, really important to me is our disposition. Like, how are we oriented, right? Are we oriented towards like a more positive way of thinking, a neutral, negative, you know, anything under the sun? So I really think about it in a really, really layered and all-encompassing way. And I just feel that, you know, if you boil it down, diversity just means difference. And different is just different, right? There's no value judgment against that. It just means not the same as something else. So that's what I think of when I hear diversity.
Excellent. Anne-Marie, you are coming from a neurodiverse organization. Where you are engulfed in. How does that affect, or maybe not, does it matter? Maybe it doesn't.
The video's going in and out, so I don't know if that's on my side or your side, so I might have missed part of your question, but I'll try my best to answer that. I think everything the three panelists before me have said, I completely agree with, and I learned a little bit myself today in Minu's slide, which I think is amazing, and I'm gonna maybe talk to her about incorporating some of that into my own presentations going forward. But my background, initially, I was a for-profit business owner, and so when I think about diversity, my perspective has surely evolved over time. Initially, I associated diversity with the things we talked about: minorities, women, the LGBT community. However, after founding Spectrum Works, my understanding deepened. And I now believe, diversity should include neurodiversity. And I actively work to inform companies about the immense potential of neurodiverse individuals. And neurodivergent thinking is not just different, it can be an asset. And I think across all the things we just talked about, the way people think are different because of those things we just talked about, and that it can be an asset. And years ago, Steve Jobs, he introduced the tagline, "Think Different." And we all know the world-changing innovation that followed after that. And now Bill Gates, he recently disclosed that and reflected in a new memoir that if he were a child today, he would likely be diagnosed with autism. And these are just a few examples that highlight, the broader shift in how society values the diverse ways of thinking now, and what I believe that will start more even evolution over time on how we just embrace that true diversity is really about embracing different perspectives, as we all just talked about today, and how we can unlock the potential of each individual in whatever way that they are different, because different is not a bad thing. Different should be looked at as a positive thing.
I 100%, I love what you just said. That is amazing. True diversity is embracing all perspectives. I love that. That's great. Thank you all for your individual thoughts and views on diversity and what it means to you. I learned a new word last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, and it's psychodiversity. And it sums up what I didn't have a word to articulate what it is, which according to the Urban Dictionary, which I just thought was like fun to bring up, psychodiversity is a measure of the total diversity of thought within a system. And to the point of what you all have said, each of us comes to a work environment with a unique brain, a unique history, a unique culture, a unique family system. I thought that was great. So much of how we grow up affects where we go from point A to point B. Do you all think that there's an understanding in general of the value of psychodiversity, and then from there, like, are we aware, and then do we know how as leaders to embrace it and how to work with it? Is it becoming something that people are more aware of under the umbrella of diversity? Any thoughts?
I can jump in here. I mean, I think that there's not necessarily a clear understanding, but I think that we're getting there. I think that we're starting to understand that psychodiversity is important. And before we met with you the other day to sort of talk about this, I had never heard it encapsulated with that term, but I think it's a beautiful way to sum it up. I don't think that there's a clear understanding writ large, right? I think I think society and the world is shifting in how we think about diversity, how we think about inclusion, and how people show up in the workplace and all the layers that they show up with. I think historically, it was just assumed that you leave yourself at the door when you walk into the workplace, right? You leave whatever it is at the door and you come in, you do your work, and then you pick it up and you go back home. But I think that employers and leaders are beginning to realize more and more that we can't really put ourselves down at the door. And so I think psychodiversity is a part of that, right? Learning how people think differently, how people approach things differently. I think there are leaders who struggle with working with folks that think differently, because when people think differently, they may be more likely to challenge the status quo, right? And there are some leaders who are okay with the challenge, and there are some who are not. And so I think that we're shifting. I think it's a shift that's happening writ large in various industries across the world, not just the country. But I don't think we're there yet where we have a true understanding of it and a true appreciation of it writ large.
Mm-hmm. So to pick up on something that Minyu had said earlier, right? So we're bringing, so how we wrote it down, my pen is running out of ink. It's our preferences, right? Based on how, on our environment and how we are brought up. So do I prefer to work in a quiet place? Do I prefer to work in an office? Do I prefer to work at home? Do I prefer to work in a group or independently, right? Like one of the best phrases on a resume might be, works independently and plays well with others. So as leaders, right, if you have a group of people who prefer to operate one way or another, I love a desktop computer. I'm not going to get one. It's just not happening. I've had to learn to adapt. How can leaders help their teams and their people handle different preferences from colleagues? I love that that's how you phrase preferences. So I'm picking up on it, and I want to come back to it in the workplace.
I mean,
So I think it's. Oh, who wants to go?
I think all three of us and
I'm looking at all three of you.
Tracy,
Minyu, go ahead.
make a choice.
Minyu, go ahead, because you brought up preferences and a different perspective from something I had thought of. So why don't you start, and then we'll go from there.
Super quickly, so that we can have enough time for everybody to speak. We start with education, because I want to believe in this wonderful, beautiful world. I want to believe that it's not that leadership is a bunch of people with bad intentions. Not everybody's evil. I think that the majority of the bad decisions are made because there's ignorance. There's a lot of ignorance. And I worked 28 years for the corporate world, and I heard things like, "Oh, she's nuts. Look at that. She's just crying." Little they knew that she was neurodivergent, that she was going through something, right? Or they will go with someone who's like, "Oh, so-and-so, he's not a leader because he's not, speaking up in meetings." Little they know that they're just introverts. And we introverts, because I'm an introvert, we just process internally. So there's a lot of things that come with judgment on how you behave in the corporations or outside that are assumptions of what is not seen in the culture. Therefore, you're not that thing that they're expecting, right? So same in public speaking. I'm a public speaking coach. My clients come and say, "Can you teach me how to raise my voice?" Because they think that I'm not a leader. It's like, no. And this goes back to Tanisha. No. That's between institutionalizing yourself and code switching. You are you. This is your personality. This is how you speak. And this nonsense of whomever is the loudest and the rudest is the leader has to stop. But it will not stop if we keep complying with that and then making it happen, allowing ourselves not to be ourselves anymore. So I think to your question, it's awareness and education. The more educated the leader is, the more understanding, therefore, they can take action on it.
Excellent. Thank you. David?
Yeah, I think, to piggyback off these previous points, I think it's important that as a leader, we understand the importance and value of leading with empathy and having grace in the ways in which we lead, and also being open to understanding the lived experiences and the accommodations needed for the people that you're leading, right? You have to be able to take a vested interest in understanding the humanity of others as a leader. And so, I think it starts there, and then being able to create an organizational workplace culture where individuals are able to show up and bring their whole selves into the environment, right? That level of authenticity is felt and seen throughout the organization, and it's not just something that's said in words, but it's laid out in the actions that the leaders demonstrate in the ways in which they lead. So those would be the two additional thoughts I would add in terms of thinking about psychodiversity and what do we think, and how do we then build that into a culture where we are providing accommodations to the unique, diverse identities that are showing up in the workplace environment, leading with empathy, and then having a strong level of cultural understanding of others as leaders is critical in any workplace environment.
Thank you. Anne-Marie?
So I agree with all of the things that were just said. And when I go out to companies, one of the things I do is we try to train them or educate them on how to build a more inclusive, empathetic work environment. And a lot of that is to do with first understanding and acceptance and appreciation of people who are neurodiverse. But in this case, I think it's all the different things that Minu brought into what diversity means. It doesn't have to just be neurodiverse as we discussed this, but when I talk to them, and it's first understanding that's what those strengths are, but also understanding what accommodation means. It doesn't mean more money. It doesn't mean it's a very high cost. And, it could mean, as what you were talking about, as simple as creating a flexible work environment, that accommodate the different learning and working styles, such as quiet spaces, not just for neurodiverse, but we understand that other people also need that as well. Flexible hours. A lot of my, participants, they want to maybe work part-time, or working from home remotely versus in the office, different learning styles. But when I go in and I talk to them about accommodation, I always say universal design. So an example is years ago when they had the Disability Act, they created ramps for wheelchairs, right? And that was huge, not just for people who had a disability and being able to walk, but people pushing baby carriages, elderly people. So we find that I try to educate them on, just because you're making a small accommodation for maybe a neurodiverse individual, you'll probably eventually find that many people on your staff would appreciate that same accommodation. And then it's really, that's a way to help understand and bridge the differences in people. Just because you might think differently, you also might be benefit from some of these other accommodations, and having a more productive, efficient, effective team is what we all aspire to as business leaders.
Tracy, can I jump in, because I love what Anne Marie just said. One of the things that, I'm a word person. I really like words, and I often try to use words that people don't commonly use, and study words and things like that. One of the things that I think is difficult is just sometimes the language that we've chosen for things can really make things hard. I think the word accommodation is not necessarily the right word for what we're doing for people that need quote unquote accommodations, right? Because I feel like that word makes people feel like we're giving someone something extra, or we're bending over backwards to accommodate. And I think that that's the wrong way to look at it. The way that I look at it is, I like to consider myself a myth buster sometimes. People always say, not all people, but some people say to me, hey, I treat everybody the same. I show up, everybody gets the same treatment from me. And I go, no, you don't. Nobody does, right? Nobody treats everyone the same. No one needs the exact same treatment as someone else, or the exact same thing as someone else. And so I see it as rather accommodation. You're meeting people where they are so that they can get to wherever they need to go, right? They achieve the organizational goal or whatever it is. And so, my relationship between my two brothers, right? Completely different. They're both my brothers. I don't treat them the same. I have a brother that's silly and goofy. I have one that's very stern and serious. And if I show up with the wrong energy to the wrong brother, I've shut them out, right? And I've made our interaction a little bit more difficult. So in the workplace, if I'm creating an environment that meets people where they are, physically and socially, emotionally, and all these different things, I'm meeting people where they are. So while some things may be different about the way I'm treating certain people, it's not difference for the sake of treating someone better or worse. It's like, no, I'm meeting you where you are. And that's how we need to communicate, or that's how we need to create the environment, because this is just where you are right now.
Minyu, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Tanisha. I just love what you mentioned, that the word accommodation. No, you're not accommodating anything. And the word assimilation, don't even mention it, because I'm going to go nuts with that one. We're not assimilating. I do believe that the principles of situational leadership that were brought to us many, many decades ago still stands today. And one of the examples that I remember from the first time that I heard about situational leadership and I took the training is that they said that it's like the fingers of your hand, they're different. And if you have 5 children and you treat them the same and they're not doing what you want, that's your problem, because you're treating them the same and it's like the different fingers. And I think that's what happens in organizations. And also the tremendous misconception of what we are looking for and we minorities are looking for, because they say it's not about equality. I'm looking for equity, not equality. I'm not looking to be equal to a man. I don't have biological characteristics of a man. I'm not looking for that. Actually, if we were going for the same things, then we go back to the hand, then it will be completely unfair. So I am just looking for an opportunity to have the same chances of succession, of being successful, the same chances of being successful, because the means and the resources that I have, that you've given me, you, my boss, my leaders, my corporation, my environment, allow me to reach the same goal as anybody else, but in different circumstances. And I think that's where we're failing, that we're not understanding, but also we are maybe not putting the means, we as a society.
Can you repeat what you just said? Because I thought that was phenomenal. We're not putting people don't have the same chances because we're not creating unique circumstances?
We're not providing. But we're not providing the means for other people to succeed. We are not an environment where I allow other people to be different, but also the next step is that we're not embracing those differences. We're not celebrating them. We're kind of criticizing them or judging them. It's like, oh, you know, or whatever. They look at them, they can't. Let's give them for nothing. The fact that they're different from me, even if it's a different ability, even if it's whatever you want to put there, you know, from the fact that maybe I need the ramp, or maybe the fact that I can't see, maybe I'm blind and I need a software to help me, you know, go through meetings, or I need sign language during a town hall meeting, right? The fact that you're providing that and you're anticipating to that before people asking you, that's embracing, and I think that's where we should be advocating.
This is phenomenal, and I want to go back to something that Anne-Marie said that I had never thought of, which is just an example of having a very narrow perspective versus an open, diverse perspective, right? So the ADA accommodations and the ramps, I have carried baby strollers upstairs, and I never even thought that a ramp would also just help to make somebody who can walk but is carrying another small person with them, it makes life easier. So I'm listening to all of you, and I'm realizing, you know, just some probably perspectives of my own that I didn't realize were there. And I love that we're talking about this. So for leaders, and I'm going sideways from some of what I had prepared here, but so what can leaders do, right? Let's say that there's somebody who leads a group and a team and organization, and they're listening to all of us right now, and they're thinking maybe some of the same thing, like, oh, I didn't realize that the word accommodation might be the wrong word, right? So how can leaders find the right words? How can we be cognizant and aware of, you know, the 5 fingers, right? Each one has a different purpose. It's shaped differently. It moves differently, right? The thumb is especially important. It's, you know, what, if you had to give 2 quick tips, right, for leaders? Okay, here are 2 things you can do immediately just to maybe change, adapt, adjust, open, right, your perspective on diversity. What would those 2 things be? And then I'm going to get back on track. Go ahead, Anne-Marie.
Well, I would just say is that, like, leaders, you know, they should ask their team, how could they best support them? You know, if employees feel psychologically safe, where they could express their perspectives or ask questions or make mistakes without fear of judgment, maybe they would ask for, you know, that they need a little support, or they would rather work this way than that way. But then eventually, I think if all leaders were sort of had more training and more opportunity to learn that maybe all the things we just talked about should just be part of a normal work culture. And it's available, like, these are all the things that you know, when you come onboarding, these are all the things that are available if you need them, so that people don't feel like they're asking for anything and they'll be judged for it. It's just, this is all the things we do that you mentioned. We help people if they are blind, or they can't hear properly, or they don't take notes fast enough. They can use the note-taking software. There's a lot of these things that are, if people just put it out there as a company in general, and that their new employees or everybody knew about them, they would feel safe in asking for them.
Thank you.
I would also add that I think leaders need to invest time in their own non-workplace environments to be in spaces where diversity exists, right? And so they need to diversify their circle and be able to understand the lived experiences through culture, background, affiliation, all those different, you know, areas of the spectrum, to really understand how people move throughout the world, what they need, and how they can be best supported. If as a leader, if your circle, your network outside of work looks like you're ultimately going to limit the opportunities to lead through a diverse lens in your workplace environment. So I think it's really important that, oftentimes leaders will go into a workplace environment and articulate a commitment to diversity, right? And to articulate a commitment to creating inclusive environments, but they don't replicate that in their personal life as well. And so that all has to be in alignment with each other, and that will help foster a greater appreciation for the diversity that shows up in the workplace for leaders, for sure.
Excellent. Any other 2 sentences worth of advice for leaders? I love what has come out so far. Okay, I'm going to take that as a no. And move on. So I wanted to include neurodiversity for a couple of reasons. One is because, Anne-Marie, this is your area of expertise, and I think, and it's, I did a little bit of research, and I could be completely and totally wrong here, but I read a statistic that says about 2.21% of adults in the U.S. have autism spectrum disorder. I feel like, so as a parent also, my kids have had a very different school experience where they are made aware of neurodiverse fellow students and classmates. And so that school environment has changed. I have a son who has ADHD. And, I probably have it too, and just, it wasn't diagnosed. According to the pediatrician, it goes through the mom. So is there an increase in awareness, or is there an increase in the numbers of people? And what are, like, I see even just with my own son, his level of creativity, his fearlessness, right? And I appreciate that so much because I'm not sure that I have that. So what are some of the benefits to including neurodiversity in a working group, in a team, in a particular work environment? Minu, I know you have your hand up, but I want to see what Anne-Marie has to say first. I'm going to let her go first.
I think it could be good to sort of define neurodiversity. So I'm not sure what, the audience is aware of. So, and that could sort of tell the lens of, answering your question of why and what they could do in the workforce. But neurodiversity is really the idea that people think, learn, and process information in different ways. And it can go back to everything Manu and everybody else said today as well. We all think and process things in different ways, but that these differences are natural, but also valuable. It includes autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and other cognitive variations like Tourette's. And instead of viewing these differences as deficits, which was the past, neurodiversity recognizes them as unique strengths that can contribute to creativity, innovation, and problem solving. And I think that the world is opening up the idea of diverse thinking and leveraging what they can and can't do in a workplace or just in life, that we all have potential. And if the strengths are supported in the right way, and we build these empathetic, inclusive workforces where everybody can bring themselves to the office and do their best work as a team, I think that's when things start to change. When you talked about, the varying things, so autism, 1 in 36 in the United States, 1 in 36 of every children born will be autistic. That's huge. 5.2 million adults with autism in the United States already. These are really huge statistics, and 1 million autistic individuals will graduate from high school over the next 10 years. So even just that subset of neurodiversity is quite large. Let alone adding in the ADHD and dyslexia. But they can contribute so much to creativity, innovation, and problem solving, as you talked about before. And for example, I love to throw out a name, Richard Branson. Everybody knows Richard Branson. He's super creative, adventurous, all of those things, and he has dyslexia. And there are quite a number of other people that, and you don't have to dive into just the famous people. There's just in your everyday, like Tracy, you just said, you think you are, your children might be. But if we put out these higher, these people that have created companies and are innovators, I think it just helps people to wrap their mind around the fact that they can do great things, and the world is a better place because of all these innovators. So I'm not going to run through every single one that fits in every single bucket of those, but diverse thinking really does make a difference.
Excellent, thank you. And you?
Thank you so much, and this is fantastic, and thank you for enlightening us. I think that going back to the point of education, people just don't know what neurodiversity is, and so they if you don't know it, you cannot identify someone that has a neurodivergence at your workplace. So that's a problem. I love what David was saying earlier about empathy. How can I help you if I don't even feel what you have felt, if I don't have your needs? And so I think empathy plays a big role here. So I study psychopedagogy, and I remember a long time ago, even when I was in school, there was this activity where the teacher put us all, ask us some questions, and then put us together according to how we responded to those questions. And so he said, there you go. Now you are in a group with like-minded people. And everybody go like, yay, I feel so good with like-minded people. Okay, so I'm going to ask a question, and then each of your groups will respond to this question. He asked the question, and then all of us responded in different ways. But here was the discovery. When you are with only like-minded people, or with the same abilities, like if everybody has the same neurodivergence, even being neurodivergent or not being, what you have is a horrendous blind spot. Or many blind spots. Because if I can't see beyond my understanding, my personality, my DNA, my wiring, how can I see what I can't see? And in the Johari window, that's exactly that window, the unknown for you and unknown for me. So what happens in a workplace that is not embracing neurodiversity is that they're missing the boat. And the worst part of this is they don't even know it. Then things don't go as planned, they're not productive, no one's growing, there's no, there's nothing happening, and they go like, I don't know what happened. I do know what happened, that you have just like-minded people on the same plane, unable to see all your blind spots.
That's a great story. And even in that group of like-minded people, there were still different answers. Right, which is what we're talking about, right? So even if you think you're surrounded by, others who think the way that you do, they really don't, right? So it sounds like embracing that is just, we have to remember that, and it's super important. David, you look like you wanted to say something.
I just want to add to the conversation just a little bit around neurodiversity. I mean, we talk about it, and I think it's a trendy thing right now in terms of how we consider it in the workplace, how we consider it, when working with students here at NJIT, and making sure that we're being as inclusive as possible. I also wanted us to consider, the intersectionality of neurodiverse individuals, right, and what they bring into the space. So when we think about other identities like race and class and gender, for example, and what does that mean in terms of someone being neurodivergent? Being neurodivergent also requires to have extensive resources so that you can be accommodated in a way that you're able to get what you need so that you can excel within the workplace environment, right? And so if someone doesn't have equitable access to certain resources because of their socioeconomic circumstances, that can play a role in who gets access to what, right? And so, and oftentimes it's, people in lower income communities, Black and brown folks, women, people identifying as LGBTQ, that not having the equitable access to these type of resources. And so when we think about neurodiversity, I want to make sure that we also name the importance of intersectionality from these marginalized identities, because that's oftentimes overlooked, but also very critical to the conversation.
You bring up a really good point, because I would imagine that depending on, let's say that if you are a neurodiverse child, right, depending on where you live, if you're in public school, if you're in private school, right, your resources are going to be different. And also depending on where you work. I mean, years ago it was, I think, right, Google, and we're bringing in ping pong tables. I mean, creative environment, and that's what we're doing. But other organizations weren't doing that. So each organization is going to work in its own way, and which organization, right, and the culture of that organization will fit what, if based on your socioeconomic background and what you have access to and what you don't have access to, how much more difficult could it be to get into the appropriate work environment, right, that allows for acceptance, right, differences in environment for not for accommodation, but for making something work, right, giving you what you need to succeed. But if you grow up in a particular area and you don't have access to that, you're automatically you're missing part of that intersection, right, that you're talking about, David. And I think that's huge. The last thing that I wanted to bring to this group, and then we're going to open it up to questions, is generational diversity. So the reality is, and this is great, right? We are healthier, people are living longer, and so you could have a team of people with someone in their, late 60s, early 70s, right? Healthy, active, working with a ton of experience and historical knowledge and institutional knowledge and really just having learned so much over so many decades of working. And then you're going to have brand new, fresh out of school, 20-somethings, right? And I think technology and the way that we work has changed so much in those 50 years, in the last 50 years, right? That generational diversity is something that I'm also hearing a lot about, specifically in the workplace. And so I'm wondering, and we'll do this quickly so that we have time for questions, but I'm going to go back to before, right? 2 quick lines of advice, or 2 quick thoughts of advice from each of you for how leaders can work within a multi-generational, right, or a generationally diverse, I don't even know if that's a word, environment to foster good working culture and that open-mindedness and the growth mindset, right, of, I do have something to learn from this someone in whatever direction that's going, right? So some quick thoughts there.
I would say if I'm going to give 2 quick thoughts, the first one is to ignore or hold lightly, let me just say, not ignore, hold lightly what the media and people are saying that various generations do and various generations come with. I think hold that lightly and engage with the people in front of you. So as a leader, engaging with your staff or whatever, and doing that in a way that you're modeling it for other people on the teams, other people in the organization, so that they can do that as well. But my number one thing is hold the assumptions that you get from media very lightly.
Excellent advice. Go ahead, Anne-Marie.
So for me, in my organization, we have people that are very extreme ends of that age spectrum. And for us, one of the most effective ways, I think, as a tip I would give, is to have cross-generational mentorship programs. And that doesn't have to be a formal mentorship program. It could be an informal way that they work together to exchange ideas. And where they could age groups share knowledge and experiences. For example, my program director, she recently retired in September at the age of 89 and a half. And so she's the most amazing employee I've ever had across all the companies I've ever had. I wouldn't be successful without her. She was a mentor for her entire team, including employees who were 21 years old. And while she shared her, decades of wisdom and leadership experience, they helped her navigate technology and social media. And the exchange is truly two-way street, demonstrating that every generation has something valuable to contribute. And, I'll end that by, her social media skills were much better than mine, even without their help. So I think it's just understanding and giving them the opportunities to see and respect each other and what their skills and what they could, teach each other.
Excellent. Thank you. I like that idea.
I'll chime in here very quickly and just say it's the importance of meeting people where they are, right? And understanding the generational differences that might be at play in the workplace by getting to know people beyond the titles and the roles and responsibilities in which they hold in the workplace. We're individuals first, and we should approach this work with humanity at the core. And so really just getting to know people and meeting them where they are, I think is really critical to being able to address that particular question. I also think just also taking time out of your day to be current on what's happening within these different generations, and being tuned into pop culture or the different nuances in which certain generations find appealing. So, I think, for me, working on a college campus with students is, it definitely keeps me on my toes, right? In terms of being able to be aware of some of those needs and just, being able to meet people where they are, I think adds a lot of value to any working relationship.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And to me, I'll give you just one, and this is related to situational leadership. It is a workshop that we actually give to people, and we have called this situational communication. So it's just one thing. We keep complaining about people not responding or not having a dialogue, right? So communication is broken across generations, and it's not because one of the generations or many of them do not care. Everybody cares. The thing is that for the first time in history, we have 4 or 5 generations at the same time in the workplace. So then you have I sent an email to Andrew and he didn't respond. How rude. And then Andrew will go with, no, I sent a text message to Anne-Marie and she didn't respond. How rude. So now both are thinking that both are rude, unresponsive, unreliable, and all these things. And the reality is that all we have done is chosen the communication means that works for me. And so situational communication goes back to the hand. And my suggestion or my advice would be simply ask.
Yeah.
An exercise that we do with our people is make a list of the people in your team, like start locally, right? Make a list of the people in your team. Okay, so now I have David and I have Tanisha, right? Now you go with them and say, Tanisha, what is the best way for us to communicate? And then Tanisha says, by doing this, or by chat, by WhatsApp. Oh, fantastic. I write it down, I memorize that. And then we apply what David is saying. How about we communicate in the form, shape, and medium or channel that the other person or the receiver will actually respond to? So I'm adapting to that communication. That will be my advice.
And I think that all of that makes so much sense. And I think that you all have said these things in a variety of parts and pieces. And I think if I were to synthesize it, right, it's so you meet people where they are. You get out of just name, title, and function, and try to understand the person, right, behind the role and behind the job. And communication. I mean, it's, there was an exercise that we did when I was getting my MBA, and it was almost like an interview for someone so that the person in the role and the leader would know how to communicate with each other. It was an exercise. How do I talk to you? What is the best way, right? So then you're working together collaboratively. And I think that and I'll go right back to the beginning, right? Generational differences, psychodiversity, right? Neurodiversity, in the sense of how we all process and take in information. Those are all just inherent differences that really exist within all of us. And I'm realizing, they almost shouldn't even be labeled, right? Like it's just, we are people. And at the end of the day, we got to figure out how to work together, how to talk to each other. And I think that also takes time, right? And in the work environment, we get so caught up in, I've got this to do, I've got that to do, I've got this deadline, that sometimes that makes it too easy to forget about the human part. And I'll throw in, you include just the fact that there's a prevalence of remote work and remote teams. We also, for somebody like me, so my generation, right, my age group, I have to learn how to get to know people differently, in a different way from how we used to, right? It used to be, oh, let's go get coffee, let's go get lunch, or, oh, my desk is next to yours. Now I'm learning how to get to know people this way, through a screen, which is different. And so I did want to just bring up one of the comments that came in the question and answer, that leaders need grace too. And Walter, I couldn't agree with this more. I think that is one of the unique challenges that leaders have. You've got all of these demands and you're trying to work with your people. And somewhere in there, you've also got all of your own like personal and life stuff. And I think everybody, right, needs probably a little bit of that. So maybe it's leading with empathy and living with empathy, right? So not just, one or the other, but both and. And we have a follow-up from Jeremy to that. Let's see. Easy on people leaders. Huge gap across all industries and all cultures when it comes to leaders who are trained and have the emotional intelligence to lead people or lead an organization. We won't have supportive cultures until we close the leadership gap. So I think that's the question that Jeremy is asking. It sounds like Jeremy, it sounds like what you're asking is if leaders need to be trained in emotional intelligence, right? And so once they are trained in that way, then I think closing the leadership gap means leading better, leading with more empathy, meeting people where they are. So panelists, what do you think about that? Is leadership training something that even current leaders need, more leaders need? What are your thoughts?
I think we all need it, right? I think, there are some people who are personal leaders, right? Meaning that they're leading themselves, right? They don't have a team, but they're leading themselves. And there are other people who are leading large teams and leading other leaders. And I think that it's important to continually engage in self-reflection and engage in skill building and, figuring out we talked about, everybody learns differently. Everybody, what's going to be the method or the way that you gain these new skills, right? And I think another important point is, getting feedback from the people you work with about how you show up and how you approach things and like where they think your gaps are, because there may be some alignment with where they think your gaps are and where you think your gaps are, or there may be some misalignment. And if you know that people perceive you a certain way, that is information that is so helpful to you, because then it can help you adjust your approach and figure out, hey, if I'm coming off this way and I think I'm coming off another way, maybe something's not right. Maybe I need to adjust my approach. And maybe that is investing in some emotional intelligence training or figuring out how to do that. But I do think that leadership development needs to be ongoing for all leaders. And, I know some leaders who are really great about developing themselves. And I know other leaders who just think like, hey, I've been doing this. I've been a leader for 10, 15. I got it. I know what I'm doing. And I think that's a mistake, right? I think we all can use some development and some self-reflection.
Yeah, learning is ongoing. Other thoughts?
And not much else to add there, but I would, it was a great response. I think, just thinking about leadership as a journey, right? And that we're never at a turning point where we can say we've completed that journey of learning, unlearning, and relearning what it means to be a leader. And so I really think that all leaders should really go into their role with a commitment to being a continuous learner as a leader.
Terrific. We have like a minute or two left. Does anybody want to leave us with final thoughts?
Well, in terms of leadership, I would just add that the key word is emotional intelligence. It's lacking for all of us. It's lacking, and as soon as a leader understands that emotions are the drivers of decisions and not the rational. We don't make decisions with our head. We make decisions with our feelings, with our guts, and so emotions is what's driving. And so emotional intelligence just tells us that it's the ability of recognizing somebody else's emotions and then managing mine, and not vice versa. I cannot manage what you feel. And so the sooner that we understand that emotional intelligence is what's going to get our teams to want to do the work and want to be and want to, like, if you can move the our willingness with that, then I think we'll be on the other side.
Excellent.
And I would just end, I know we have not a lot of time. Everything everybody said is 100%. I would just say is new leadership training. So when somebody is about to become a leader or is thinking about become a leader, if we give them the right training, then our future generations will be more empathetic and have more emotional intelligence.
It's a very fair point. And I think to David's point, it's ongoing, right? 100% ongoing. Well, I thank you all very much for being here today. This was great. I learned a lot. This is not necessarily an easy topic to talk about, but it's an important topic, and I really, really appreciate everybody's time. For anybody who is watching on the registration page, there are LinkedIn profiles. Feel free, please, to connect with any and all of us on LinkedIn. As you can see on your screen, there's a bunch more stuff coming. We're talking about important things, and I'm so thankful for our panelists and our attendees today.